Everybody know Crawford going out there well. Man, Terence Prince can't spell fight.
Crazy.
What's going on, you guys? So James Lights Out Toney had an interview with Fight Hype. Salute to Fight Hype for the interview. And he gets asked a question about the Spence and Crawford fight. And James Toney says that Terence Crawford stops Errol Spence in 7 or 8 rounds. Hit that like button for your boy. Give me that HBO special. That's the Help a Brother Out special. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers. But James Lights Out Toney has been very vocal on his pick and who he feels wins the big super fight between Errol the Truth Big Fish Spence Jr. and Terence Bud Crawford.
I think when Terence Crawford, he'll come on and, survey the situation first couple rounds, like he always do, and then see the mistakes that my man makes, because he made a lot of mistakes, and then boom, by 7 or 8 rounds, fight's over.
Now, after hearing what James Toney had to say, he said mistakes. He said Errol Spence makes mistakes. And this is something your boy Bushido been saying. I think you guys need to start listening to your boy Bushido, right? We may not always get the fight dates right or if a certain fight's going to happen and those type of predictions. But when it comes to actually throwing down, I think a lot of the OGs in boxing feel the same way your boy Bushido feels about a lot of these matchups. Errol Spence Jr. makes a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes that a high IQ fighter like Terence Bud Crawford will capitalize on. Spitting out the mouthpiece, yada, yada, yada. I mean, he came out himself and said he made some rookie mistakes. And going into a fight with a guy like Terence Crawford, you can't afford to make any mistakes, let alone a rookie mistake. He said that Errol Spence can't spell fight, right? A while back, he said Errol Spence can't spell fight. He said dude can't fight. It's almost like James Toney, guys like James Toney, Roy Jones, they waiting to see something from Errol Spence Jr. Will we ever see it? Ain't no telling. We may see something in this fight with Keith One-Time Thurman. But the mistakes that Errol Spence tends to make, right? Not let alone the injuries, the inactivity, things of that nature, right? Going into a fight with a guy like Terence Crawford who lives, sleeps, eats, and boxing, you got to be on your A game. You have to be on your A game. And I notice a lot of dudes get upset, right, when I talk about Errol Spence and certain scenarios, certain situations like the Fulton, how Fulton didn't tell Inoue that he had to go get a belt. He on the wrong side of the street. He across the pond and all this other stuff, right? Now, he didn't tell him nothing. He's going over there to tackle the monster. The guys call me biased from calling it out. And that's all they could say, because deep down in your heart, you know your boy Bushido's right. Even though I may be saying something that you don't want to hear, deep down in your boxing soul, you know your boy Bushido's right.
It's Spence is a good fighter. He's not great. Everybody trying to make him out to be.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But, hey, he got to prove himself a little bit more. Hey, Terence proved he won 3 world titles, right?
Errol Spence Jr., if he wanted to fight, it would have been happened. Is Al Heyman to blame? I don't know. Some may say guys like Fulton may be a little bit more expendable to PBC than a guy like Errol Spence Jr. or a guy like Gervonta Tank Davis, who, by the way, negotiations is continuing on from according to Oscar De La Hoya. They're going to get this thing ironed out and get this fight done for April 15th. But back to what James Toney was saying, the mistakes. Right, you'll hear guys say, "Oh, well, James Toney, he made a mistake. Now he can't even talk right." Well, I mean, to be fair, Errol Spence don't sound like he's 100% there either, and he's a young guy in his prime. So, kill me with the jokes, okay? I know a lot of the dudes like to bash James Toney all of a sudden. I remember once upon a time everybody loved James Toney, but since he's speaking, I guess you could say a little bit more outspoken, a little bit, I guess you could say negative about Errol Spence Jr. Well, now James Toney's punch drunk and all this other stuff, right? He was never that good, and, he's fat and all this other stuff, right? But before all that, everybody loved James Toney for his attitude and his character. And then just to be honest, he's just a warrior, right? So his opinion in boxing should mean something. He said Errol Spence makes a lot of mistakes. And this is something that we all see, right? We see these mistakes that he'll make in these fights that we have seen him in recently. And if you make those same mistakes against a guy like Terence Crawford, it could spell disaster. But like I said before, you guys, we've been following this thing since it started. This should be motivation for Errol Spence Jr. He should be motivated to go up in there and shut everybody up. James Toney, Bushido Boxing, Roy Jones Jr., whoever else may feel that Terence Crawford stops him within 10 rounds. See, initially I said 9 rounds, but I'll give Errol Spence the benefit of the doubt and I'll say it goes to 10 rounds. I think Terence Crawford stops Errol Spence within 10 rounds. Guys like James Toney says 7 or 8 rounds. Hey, whatever the case may be, guys see something in that particular matchup to where Errol Spence Jr. gets stopped. It's up to Errol Spence Jr. to prove these guys wrong. The business comes to play, signing this, doing this and that. Look, man, at the end of the day, if Errol Spence Jr. was more hands-on in these negotiations with this fight, I believe it would have happened already. I don't think they really want the fight. Derrick James ain't been studying this guy. Derrick James should have been studying Terence Crawford for years, to the point where he could envision exactly what Terence Crawford's going to do. Even though most people don't know what Bud's going to do. It don't even seem like Bomac's going to know what Bud's going to do. Derrick James should have been studying this dude like it was his own fighter, to make sure his fighter knew everything he needs to know to go into that tough matchup with Terence Crawford, who was a strong fighter, a high IQ fighter, and a very disciplined fighter. Errol Spence Jr. must be on his A game to deal with a Terence Crawford. There could be no mistakes being made in that fight. Yeah, I know some of you guys don't want to hear it, but this is the reality of the situation. Yeah, Errol Spence Jr. may have the leverage as far as having the belts and, Terence Crawford being an independent fighter, and he got to go over there and bend the knee to PBC. But when you put them two dudes in the ring, what's going to happen? What's going to happen when you put those two guys in the ring? I predict Terence Crawford gets him out of there within 9-10 rounds. Some guys, even sooner. Some guys say 4 rounds. James Toney, 7 to 8 rounds. But it's up to Errol Spence Jr. to prove people wrong. Will he do it? I don't know. This fight with Keith Thurman could spoil everything. It could spoil all our hopes, all our dreams, everything we've been talking about. All this stuff could all be for naught. It could all be for nothing. Going into a fight with Keith One-Time Thurman, a motivated Keith One-Time Thurman. Some people don't believe that Keith Thurman has a chance due to his extremely, extremely wide spots of inactivity. I mean, if you say Errol Spence been inactive, well, Keith Thurman, you could argue that he's been even more inactive than Errol Spence Jr. However, stylistically, style-wise, he has a really, really good style that could possibly pose some problems for Errol Spence Jr. if Errol Spence Jr. is not even on his A game with Keith. But these are other things that people don't want to talk about. What if Keith Thurman styles and profiles on Errol Spence Jr.? Will he even have the confidence to go into a fight with Terence Crawford? Maybe he needs this fight with Keith Thurman to have the confidence to go into a fight with a crafty fighter like Crawford. Maybe that's what it is. But whatever the case may be, folks, James Toney is very outspoken. He said Errol Spence can't spell fight. He said everybody knows that Crawford stops Errol Spence Jr. I mean, he said Errol Spence Jr. simply makes too many mistakes and Crawford stops him within 7 or 8 rounds. Tell me what you guys think. Like, subscribe, holla at your boy. Peace out.